Hello everybody and welcome to this wonderful Pride themed video. I'm Sean Ferrick for Trek Culture and here are the 10 biggest LGBTQIA+ moments in Star Trek. Now just before we kick straight off into this video, I just want to take a second to say I wish you all a very happy Pride. However you are feeling, whatever situation you are in, know that we are all part of this one big happy family. We celebrate each other, every color of the rainbow, every version of ourselves. Just know that you are loved and know that we're all Trekkies, all in this together. Number 10, the TRILL do not care about gender-based relationships. If you think of the introduction of the TRILL in Star Trek The Next Generation episode of The Host, you'll remember Ambassador Odan and his relationship with Dr. Crusher. Now, before we know that the TRILL are a joined species, they are very much in love, because this is television and everyone falls in love in 2 seconds, and that's fine. The host for Odan is killed in a mission. We then discover the TRILL are symbiotic in their relationship. The symbiont is moved to Riker, and that makes up the bulk of the episode, but it's really the final scene that is the crux of this moment. When Odan's new host arrives on the Enterprise, we the audience and Dr. Crusher learn that the new host is female. There's no issue from Odan's side that they just simply pick up again from where they left off. But Dr. Crusher struggles with this idea and in fact makes a statement that effectively suggests that humans of the 24th century are not ready to love on that level. Now this is a line that's been picked over many times because it was a little clumsy in its execution, because it does seem like they're saying that humans of contemporary times weren't ready to accept the fact that love may exist between two women. It's an episode that's aged in a middling kind of way. We appreciate it for what it was trying to do, but at the same time, Star Trek, thankfully, has gone an awful lot further in the years since. Number 9, ADIRA and the introduction of non-binary characters. Now, speaking of going further in the years since, you're going to see Star Trek Discovery is going to pop up a few times on this list. But in Star Trek Discovery's 3rd season, Blue Dabario, who is in fact a non-binary actor, was cast in the franchise's first non-binary role. ADIRA's coming out scene is handled, I feel, beautifully, because it's not a huge moment. It's not a big, massive statement to the audience. It's simply ADIRA corrects STAMETS. For the first few episodes of season 3, ADIRA is consistently referred to as she. And this was a little bit jarring because we had known as an audience that Blue Dabario was going to be playing a non-binary character. So I don't feel I was alone in going, hang on, are they misgendering them? What's going on? And then, nice and simply, in a conversation in the Spore Lab, ADIRA just says, actually, would you mind, my pronouns are they, them. I don't identify really as male or female. And Paul Stamets just goes, okay. That's what we need. That kind of representation and that kind of depiction of these conversations is crucial in normalizing what is a very normal way of being. And Star Trek has always been at its best when it's pushing boundaries and when it's introducing ideas that potentially as an audience we're not quite there with. They did it in the 60s with the original series, they did it in the 80s and 90s with Next Generation. Oh wow, are we going to discuss DS9 on this list as well? And here is Discovery, again, pushing forward and breaking down boundaries. This was a massive moment. Number 8, the TRILL struggle with taboo relationships. Now, we're back to discussing the TRILL, but now we're going to move to Star Trek Deep Space Nine. And I feel that pre-Discovery Rejoined, the episode from the 4th season of DS9, is probably the very first thing that pops into mind when anyone thinks of LGBTQIA+ representation in Star Trek, because this of course is the episode that featured the kiss between Terry Farrell and Susanna Thompson. It was the first same-sex kiss in Star Trek history. The issue raised in the episode is not the fact that two women express their love for each other, it's that the TRILL are a society who do not want new hosts of symbionts who had been together in previous lives to pick up where they left off. This is to stop a hierarchy of TRILL symbionts simply staying together throughout all time. It's very, very, very important to note that while, look, as an audience, we know what's being discussed on screen, we can see it, not one character in the episode refers in any way to the fact that two women are kissing. It is all down to do with what is spoken of as an archaic viewpoint on the part of the TRILL. Now, the episode was not without its controversy. There were calls, there were letters, there were all the things that come with showing anything new on screen. But Rejoined is a crucial episode. And look, I don't often do this, but I'm going to do this really, really quickly. Okay, I was lucky enough to meet Terry Farrell at a con a couple of years ago. I told her, as we were queuing up to meet each other, that her depiction of Dax helped me on my journey to coming out. Terry Farrell grabbed my hand and said how proud that made her, and that is a memory I really just wanted to share with everybody today. Terry Farrell, we love you. Number 7. We know why he never works out with the ladies. There has long been a discussion around Geordie LaForge and the depiction of his own sexuality in The Next Generation. If this is news for some people today, I will not be massively shocked, because in the 80s at a convention, Gene Roddenberry was asked point blank, did he intend to have gay characters in his upcoming series, which was of course the then in pre-production Star Trek The Next Generation. He categorically said yes. Years later, it was revealed by Jerry Taylor that he had intended for Geordie LaForge to be that character. Geordie was already representing two other minority groups, that he is a black man and he is also a disabled man. Of course, he's blind and needs the visor to see. Whether there was a hesitation to have him fill too many roles in this respect, that is still a little bit up in the air. And obviously, Gene Roddenberry's health started to rapidly decline as TNG was in production, and of course he passed away by the 5th season. On screen, we just see Geordie failing with the ladies again and again, and it became a little bit of a running joke. But had they had the chance to depict why he continually failed with women, that would have given the character a little bit more understanding of what was going on here. I say allegedly because, of course, I'm not going to name any names, but apparently, according to several of the actors, there were directives from the top that there would not be a depiction of LGBTQIA plus characters in Star Trek at this time. Potentially, that also went into this decision not to show Geordie as anything other than a heteronormative male. Gene Roddenberry, for his part, before he died, he spoke about his own growth as a human when it came to homosexuality. He said that as a youth he had very homophobic views, he had used the F word as a slur, and he had not understood anything really about gay people. And as he had grown up, he was able to take ownership of that and say that no, like, that was pure ignorance. And he knew it then not to be anything other than a perfectly normal way of being as time went on. While he would of course pass away before we would see things like Rejoined or Star Trek Discovery, it is heartening to know that, at least in the later years, he knew what way the future was going. Number 6, Androgyny and the Outcast. The Outcast was an episode of The Next Generation that caused quite a bit of controversy on its initial airing. Soren, who is a member of the Janai, confesses to Riker that though they are an androgynous race with no male or female genders, that she has always felt like a female. Now that is completely against society for the Janai, and in fact leads to what is effectively conversion therapy by the episode's end. Riker attempts to get Soren off the planet, only for her to then reveal that she has undergone therapy and she feels fine now. It's quite sickening and powerful. The episode came under controversy because it was felt by LGBTQIA plus advocates that it just didn't go far enough. That it was almost like it was, kind of a token, look, we've covered that now. In the years that followed, writers like Ronald D. Moore would later speak and say that they held their hands up and went, you know what? No, LGBTQIA plus topics were not high on their priority list at the time. I can appreciate their honesty. You know, not everything has to be about everything at all times. And considering how well Star Trek went on to depict these issues, it's really heartening to show the growth that the franchise went through. While the Outcast may have stumbled in its attempt, it was, in itself, a pretty bold step forward. Number 5, I'm looking for a friend. Oh, Garak. Andrew J. Robinson's portrayal as Garak ranks as potentially one of my favourite performances in all of Star Trek. His first appearance in the episode Past Prologue of DS9's first season, there is no qualms about it. His Cardassian is bisexual, and yes, he is very much trying to f*** Julian Bashir. This coming from Andrew Robinson himself. As the character was brought back for later appearances, he was asked to tone that down, which he did. You still get this kind of raw sensuality from Garak in a way that, you know, I'm terrified of him. Nothing to do with where he identifies on the LGBTQIA plus rainbow, but more of the fact that he looks like the kind of guy who would pull a gun during sex. Later on, he would go on to start developing a Bible, which was his way of understanding the character's motivations. And in it, he discussed same-sex relationships that Garak had had as a younger man. This was expanded into the novel A Stitch in Time. Later again, in 2020, Andrew Robinson and Alexander Siddig would appear together in the fanfic script Alone Together. It was done over Zoom on YouTube, and it depicts a meeting between Garak and Bashir 20 years later. In this meeting, Garak states unequivocally that he had a bit of a dalliance with a certain Cardassian who was a Gull, then a Legate, then the emissary of the Power Wraiths. It looks like, in the long run, gender meant nothing to Garak. And again, more positive representation like this, please. Number 4. Casting the first openly transgender actor. Ian Alexander is a transgender actor and joined the crew of Star Trek Discovery in its 3rd season. He played Gray Tal, a TRILL who, although it wasn't stated on screen, is also a transgender character. Now, this was confirmed by the writers of Star Trek Discovery. Gray has had a sort of a strange introduction to Star Trek in that he's been dead the whole time. Thankfully, on the planet where we discovered the cause of the burn, we were able to see a holographic representation of Gray, which allowed Gray to then interact with CULBERG. It's been confirmed that the 4th season of Discovery is going to explore Gray in greater detail and also depict the fact that yes, Gray, not just Ian Alexander, but Gray is transgender and how this impacts the character and those around him. Number 3. Dr. Julian Bashir and Dax finally get together. The Dogs of War and the opening scene of What You Leave Behind very much show Julian Bashir with the female Ezri Dax, and you would be exactly correct. However, the TRILL, who are just trailblazers when it comes to love is love, they come back into play here again. After the events of Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and of course according to the fanfic that Alexander Siddig and Andrew Robinson portrayed last year, shows that unfortunately Ezri was killed. However, the Dax symbiont survived and was transferred to a male host. Bashir identifies this male host as named Ken Dax. Ken Dax was a botanist. This becomes important because when the friend groups get together, we got Bashir and O'Brien and Keiko and Ken. Keiko and Ken get on like a house on fire. Bashir does discuss the fact that yes, there was an adjustment period to the fact that Ezri Dax, whom he loved, is now Ken Dax, whom he still loves, but he does have to adjust to the fact that Ken is male. In this same story, and in a statement that still the TRILL are struggling with these taboo ideas of relationships, it's TRILL society themselves that forces the two men apart. Not the fact that they are two men. It is that same issue between the Khan and Dax symbionts. They don't want that to happen again. It was a very deliberate choice on the part of the writer to show that it wasn't Bashir choosing not to be with a man, it was Bashir agreeing to not agreeing, but acquiescing to the pressure that Dax is under from TRILL society. Another step forward in showing that the characters are quite okay with this expression of sexuality if their society at the time is not. Number 2, Hugh Culber and Paul Stamets. Hugh Culber and Paul Stamets are the greatest depiction of a same-sex couple in all of Star Trek. We'll get to number 1 now in a moment. Wilson Cruz and Anthony Rapp. On screen, they've been married since their characters were introduced, and there was a lot of discussion about how important their relationship was going to be. And then Culber was killed in season 1 of Discovery, and I nearly threw my remote at the television because I thought this was Star Trek falling to the bury your gays trope that hopefully is on the way out in Hollywood. However, season 2, Culber comes back. And what's more than that, we get one of the most in-depth explorations of PTSD and how it affects relationships between these two men. It's actually fantastic. And going into season 3 of Discovery with more Wilson Cruz, which is never a bad thing to hear about, really the heart of the show is their relationship. And I don't think it's overstating it to say just how important Star Trek Discovery has been for LGBTQIA+ representation in Star Trek, in science fiction, and in the media in general. It was a very long road, yes, to get from those early days of Star Trek to the fact of Hugh Culber and Paul Stamets happily married in the 32nd century on the Discovery A. It wasn't an easy road and it wasn't without its bumps, but it is a fantastic journey all the way forward. Now, if they're number 2, what's number 1? Number 1, Kirk/Spock. Now hear me out. Kirk and Spock, no. On screen, they are not engaged in a sexual relationship at all. Grand, thanks for watching the video, and Kirk and Spock are credited as the first 2 fictional characters to be part of slash fiction. It's usually a sexual romantic fiction about 2 characters, often homosexual characters. The very first story appeared in 1968, which was credited with inventing slash fiction itself. The first published story came in 1974. And the rumours that the 2 men were engaged in more than just brotherly friendship was addressed by Gene Roddenberry. Roddenberry wrote in the novel for Star Trek The Motion Picture, Kirk says that he knows Spock was aware of these rumours, who would just acknowledge it with a raise of the eyebrow, while Kirk himself has always taken solace in that creature known as a woman. And then goes on to say, you know, would it not be silly to put all your hopes and dreams on someone who goes into heat once every 7 years? It was handled as gracefully as I think Roddenberry could at the time in 1979, but then think of the film itself. Think of that scene in sickbay after the spacewalk, where Spock takes Kirk's hand and speaks about the feeling between them. It's not what was done on screen that puts them at number 1 on this list. It's the possibility and the potential that goes into not just 2 male characters, but 2 of the most important characters in all of Star Trek. They don't need to be shown in bed together to know that there is a beautiful love that goes beyond heteronormative between these 2 men. And if one chooses to simply interpret it as a straightforward buddy-buddy friendship, that's okay too. That's not wrong, nor is it wrong to see anything more behind it. It is one of the deepest relationships of the entire franchise in all of science fiction and all of media. And that's what put them at the top of this list today. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to go through this video with me today. A very, very happy and safe Pride to all of you wherever you are in the world. Whatever way you are feeling, wherever you are in your journey, you be yourself. Know that you are loved, know that you are part of the great Trek family. If you have any other moments that you want to talk about, please drop it into the comments below. Please don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And remember, you can catch us over on Twitter at TrekCulture. You can catch myself at Sean Ferrick on both Twitter and Instagram. Remember, look after yourselves, love yourselves. We love you. Live long and prosper. Thanks, guys.